Okay, now let's hide this one and look at this part here. So A and K, the interesting thing about A and K compared to B and H, if we look back over here, see how we have our sign, and then within the sign is X and B and H. And so they're all looking at the things that go into the sign. And so this is all to do with the angle. Okay, so anything we change with B and H is only going to affect the angle. It will have an effect on the output eventually, but primarily, like the main thing it does is it affects the angle, okay? And so it'll multiply the angle by 2, or it'll halve it, or third it. It'll make it go faster or slower, or it will delay it, you know, like it'll push it back by an angle, or it'll increase it by an angle, okay? The other ones, A and K, they're outside the sign. And so once sign does its thing, we're then affecting it afterwards. So what I mean is, if we just let this play, and we don't change anything about A and K, so timesing by 1 doesn't do anything, adding 0 doesn't do anything, what's happening to sine? And so remember, sine can be represented by the length of this purple line here, the opposite side of the triangle. And what's happening? It's just going up to 1, and then it's going down to 0, and then to -1, and then it's going back, okay? Increase the speed a little bit. Yeah, cool. So it's just doing that over and over and over. And if I change things with B, maybe I'll make it go twice as fast, and I'll delay it by pi on 3. It's going faster, but it's not actually changing what the output is. It still goes between 1 and -1. So this is what I meant by changing the input does change the output, but it kind of also doesn't. Like, we're still going to go between 1 and -1. We're just doing it at different speeds and at different times, okay? Let me clear these back to the defaults. Okay, let's hide this so we can just focus on here. So what if we are going to change the output? So what if we times our output by 2, okay? And now we're going up to 2 and down to -2, and then to 0 and going between those. Okay, so normally sine would just go between 1 and -1, but if we get the result of that and just times it by 2, then now we're going from 1 times 2 is 2, and -1 times 2 is -2, and the 0 times 2 is still 0. Okay, let's look at that happening in Desmos over here. So let's reset B to 1, reset H to 0, and then K to 0. And then A is normally 1 if nothing's actually happening. Okay, this is our normal sine graph. And it goes from 1 to -1 and it hits 0 in the middle. Now let's change A to 2. There. And so see how it's the same kind of shape, but now it goes, all those 1s became 2s, and all the -1s became -2s, and the 0s just stayed 0s. Let me plot the original, so sine of x in a different color. Okay, and so this one now just gets bumped up to a 2. The 0 stays as 0 because 0 times 2 is still 0. And the -1 times 2 gives us -2, okay? So that's what's happening there. And anything we change A to, maybe we'll make it 6. And it's just gonna go from -6 up to 0, up to 6, and back and forth, okay? So that's what happens when we change that. What if we put this back to 1 and then change K? Let's make K 3. Interesting. So we were going between 1 and 0 and -1. By adding 3, because remember K is on the very end there, and we're just adding 3 to it. By adding 3, we're just bumping all the 1s up to 4s, all the 0s up to 3s, and all the -1s to 2. Okay, let's look at that happening over here. Let's make K, let's make A1, and then let's make K3. And yeah, have a look at this. So all the 1s get bumped up to 4s, the 0s get bumped up to 3s, which we can't quite see, but it's, where would that be? Around there, you can kind of see it. And then the -1s, if you add 3, my bad. If you add 3 to that, it becomes a 2. Okay, so literally just every number gets 3 added to it. And now our new center is at 3 instead of being centered at 0. We can also minus, so we can minus, let's minus 5. And so every value gets 5 subtracted from it. So all the 1s become -4s, the 0s become -5, and the -1s become -6. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Let's look at a quick combination of A and K. So what if we're going to times everything by 3, but keep it at -5? So, well, now let's get rid of the K first to just look at the 3. So instead of going between 1 and -1, it goes from 3 to -3, because everything just gets times by 3. And now let's put in a K. Let's just put in a K like 2. And so now, all the 3s get bumped up to 5s, because 3 plus 2 is 5. The 0s get bumped up to 2s, and the -3s get bumped up to -1s. So they should go back here. Yeah. Cool, let's look at the graph of that. So if we just make K 0 again, let's make A 3. And then we have a look what's happening. So all the 1s go bumped up to 3s. We did use 3, right? Yeah, nice. And so all the 1s are up to the 3s, 0s are still 0s, and -1s become -3s. And then we make K 2, so we're adding 2 to everything. And let's make this one, not the original anymore, let's make that 3. And so all those 3s we had get bumped up by 2 to 5. All the -3s we had get bumped up by 2 to -1. And then all the 0s, which would be here, they get bumped up to 2, which is about here. Kind of makes sense, hopefully. That's pretty much it. And then we can look at combinations between them, but it's not so much a combination, it's more like we want to isolate them. So you want to think about what are the things that happen to the input angle? Am I doubling the input angle? Am I making it only a third of the input angle? And am I adding something to the input angle like pi on 6? Or am I, I think that was minusing. So am I minusing something like pi on 6, or am I adding something like pi on 6? Because the negatives will cancel. That's pretty much it. Okay, so try the practice questions. You can also have a fiddle around with this tool and kind of make your own sense of it. I'd highly recommend that. And use this tool as well while you go through the practice questions. But yeah, have a look at the practice questions. The video explanation there is really good as well if it's not quite making sense. And yeah, once you finish this, you can tick this lesson off and move on to the next one.